Hey, and hello everyone. Welcome to the ComicBase Livestream. I'm your host, Pete Bickford. I'm coming to you from beautiful Franklin, Tennessee, out here in the sweltering south. Although, from what I hear, it's not nearly as sweltering as it is up in, say, Portland right now. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well. Thanks for joining us here. We're going to be talking about all sorts of comic-based news, industry news. This is actually going to be a really heavy one for talking tech stuff, so this is time to get your geek on. And frankly, and if things like trusted platform modules and firmware stuff bores you to tears, maybe go out, walk the dog, do something else for an hour. It'll be fine. You can always watch on the replay. But we are going to be getting pretty deep into it, and we'll be talking in particular about the sorts of things you'll need to do to be able to be ready for what the future is about to throw at you in terms of your computer tech, and to a slightly lesser extent in terms of comic-based tech, because we have a few announcements we'll be making as well on that front. Anyway, quick round of the chat here. I want to say hi to folks out there. Thank you for everyone for showing up. And let me switch my keying on so we can see stuff. Hey, Rob, and also John. John, I'll hit your question about 32-bit comic base in just a moment. Steve already, as usual, gave you a basic answer, but I'll try to share some thoughts on that later on. Hey, Mike, Oro, Greg, always nice to see everyone again. And Agent of Camp, hail. And Perry over at Zandu, nice to see you again. All right, guys, let's get to it. Oh my goodness. Oh yes, Zandu Comics out in Seattle, sliding down the hill after the record-breaking heat wave over the weekend. Yeah, I heard the temperatures out from you guys, and it blew my mind. I'm used to always thinking of the Pacific Northwest as just being kind of beautiful, green, and wet, and kind of a little bit cold. And man, is it not that right now. All right, well, let's get to it. Before we step into it very heavily, please hit that like and subscribe button. Go and mash those away on YouTube. There's a weird little algorithmic feature I hear, at least that's the way the lore goes. No one ever really knows. But it says basically if you've got 100,000 subscribers, which is slightly more than I've actually got, but only like 4% of them will actually get the messages that what you're doing is being broadcast at a given moment. Anytime you hit the like and subscribe, it actually tends to reinforce that this is something that's interesting to folks, and it actually tells all the other subscribers, hey guys, it's on the air. Let's tune in and watch, and that's always good for morale, if nothing else. All right. So first of all, all right. So to review a little bit of industry news first of all, and against a lot of things here, I have the feeling this is going to be a theme coming up over the coming months or whatever. The base news right now is inflation rate is starting to really take off. May inflation is 5%. Estimates, on the other hand, for the yearly inflation are all over the place. Things are arcing up at such a good clip right now. No one's really sure what this thing looks like. Business Insider's reporting they think, maybe 20%, coming up in the next 2 years. But it'll be a transient spike, we think. No one really knows, but a lot of people are worried, and it's shaping a lot of decisions. The first place that became concrete this week in the industry news is PayPal just announced that they are issuing a series of rate hikes along all their fees. Now, if all you ever use PayPal for is to send a couple bucks to your friend because you paid for dinner or something like that and you want to split the tab, this is not going to cause you any great worries. The real impact of PayPal is that PayPal is one of the most common merchant processors. In other words, when you give your credit card or you pay an online merchant to do your business, or you pay for anything via PayPal, PayPal is going to be the people who act as the bank in that transaction. And if they're bumping their fees, that means the cost of everything that got sold to you is going to bump up by the same amount. And PayPal's bump, it's always one of these challenging things when you're looking at the fee schedules, because you always have to pull up last fee schedule, compare them side by side, and say, whoa, is that really the old amount and that's really the new amount? Some of the bumps are like, they're approaching 80% on some of them. Certain transactions went from 2.2% to 3.49%, plus the base fee on top of it got bumped up quite a bit, and so forth. All sorts. If there's anything involving foreign currencies, also went through the freaking roof as far as the rates and so forth. But everyone in any kind of business is impacted greatly by these things, and this is straight off the bottom line. Before they ever see the money, PayPal is going to take their skim, and if their skim just went up by 60, 70, 80%, depending on what you're doing, that's gonna show up in the cost of everything you do. So don't be surprised when all your favorite online merchants, and that very likely is going to include us, that the prices you're used to paying for a long time, compensate, because it's either, it's the cost of everything. They're either going to get passed on to the consumer, or they're going to be eaten by the customer. And if all of us were sitting there with fat margins like that we could just eat stuff, we wouldn't be charging the price we did in the first place. So yeah, every time, the lesson to everyone is like, whenever you think I'm going to just tax this guy, or I'm only going to take that rich guy's money over here, inevitably it goes down the line. So that's one of these things. So expect that one to show up in a store near you sometime soon. Not great news to start the show with, but there you have it. All right, so on to other things, at least some more interesting things. Let me do a quick check of the chat, because I've been babbling for a few minutes, and always good to check. Smash that like button, Agent DeCamp. Right on, man. Is there any point in re-hitting the like and subscribe? We've done so previously. Yeah, it actually does. I mean, if you've already subscribed, it doesn't help to unsubscribe and subscribe again. That doesn't help, but it does help to hit the like, because, again, a lot of this is lore, but the people who seem to know a lot about YouTube from watching the black box from the outside, apparently they're looking for interaction with the video, and when they see that people are watching it, when they see that people are liking it or commenting, especially commenting apparently is huge. So don't be shy about putting comments in on videos. Apparently those are the ones that get promoted, the channels that get promoted, and also even just in real time that get the notification sounds to the rest of the folks. So guys, I appreciate everything you do, so thank you again for anything. So just your support means a lot to us, so keep it up, please. All right, let's move on to some happier news, and let's talk a little bit about Windows 11. Let's go and bring up the graphic on that guy, and get something on here on the screen other than my ugly mug for just a second. There we go. And now, of course, let's bring my ugly mug back in a picture-in-picture, because I almost know how to work my own video switcher now. Sweet. Windows 11 is going to be the future of Windows. It was announced on June 24th in a stunning event. I believe that was a Thursday, and by Friday they had then gone out and completely rearranged what the system requirements were going to be for it. In particular, so let me back up before I get into the indescribably weird details of this one, and say what the heck is Windows 11 to start with. Well, clearly, number one, it's one better than Windows 10. But anyway, it seems like the Mac guys, Mac started it. It's like two kids fighting in the back seat. Mac started it by saying, "Look, we did Mac OS, 6.0, 7.0, 8.0, 8.1, yeah, all the way up till 9.0, and then the Mac OS X came out." Which great ambiguity for a while, to even call it Mac OS 10, and then they decided to make it weirder by calling it, say, well, okay, 10.0 is going to be called this, and 10.1 will be called something else, and for a long, long time they had a succession of cat names, which were, it was going to be Tiger and Leopard and Snow Leopard and things like that. They ran out of cat names, and that became like national parks, and that became, something else. Eventually, Mac may also decide, look, I'm trying to sell you 50 different versions of the same product, or at least I'm trying to sell you the point releases on the same major product. They like the idea of it being Mac OS 10 forever, but they may eventually also decide what Windows has clearly decided, which is after selling you like a million different releases of the same major operating system, maybe it's time to get out, I don't know, the pencil, put an erase on the 0, scribble a 1 over the top, call it something new. And that's what they've decided after, a million different releases of, trying to get people to understand, well, you see, we're phasing out Windows 10 build 1089, which immediately everyone's thinking, build 1089? What the hell are you talking about? And you have to look in some little sub-dialogue of your system info to even figure out what the heck that even refers to. Then they started having this, we'll start calling it like 20H1, which means the first half of 2020, 20H2, second half, 21H1 just shipped, followed immediately by what we talked about last time out, which is the service pack for 21H2, which actually made it so your taskbar didn't go away on multiple monitors. This is clearly getting nuts. They're getting a little tired of it, and they decide, okay, for our big tech shifts, or at least something that makes it look really different, we're going to actually call it Windows 11. So Windows 11 it is. As usual, it's going to be a free upgrade. It's being previewed right now, and if you are on the Windows Insider program, you can actually download it right now. You could install this today, or at least install as buggy a version as they put out in the world today. You can see where their head's at in terms of like the styling, the window management. They've got a lot of really cool features in it, especially if you're the kind of person who works on a laptop and then moves onto a desktop screen. It auto redocks your windows, puts your work back exactly where you left it. You can have multiple workspaces from different, for different modes of work, for different, monitor configurations, and it really does a lovely job of preserving all that, at least according to their intro videos. Beyond that, it's a really, really pretty looking OS. I mean, a lot of you guys know I spent 9 years at Apple. It kills me to say this, but Windows 11 might possibly, fingers crossed, behind my back and everything, might possibly be better looking than Mac OS 10 right now. It looks very refined. It looks like they've really gone to town. Honestly, as usual, everyone's stealing everyone else's game, but they've polished it up in a way that looks very aesthetic and modern and pleasing. In terms of just a modern aesthetic. Beyond that, is there something like, my computer will run 3 times as fast, or my games will be way better, and my life will be more fulfilling, my love life will be, more rewarding, my, my kids will enjoy my company more? No, it'll be nothing like that. There is some really interesting integration issues. If you have stock in either Slack, or frankly any competitor to Zoom or Slack, I'd say short it right now. Because they're going to build those features in natively into Windows, which means, it's going to be very difficult to differentiate yourself in any kind of paid way. It isn't saying that you're going to go away necessarily for sure. I mean, Internet Explorer did not kill off Chrome, but man, it sure put a crimp in Netscape, didn't it? And if you have any product that you're certainly trying to sell, like, paid Zoom or paid team, any kind of Teams competitor, or for that matter, Slack, your life's going to be a drag, because this is really going to put a flattening on your company's upward trajectory, which it went to the moon during COVID, but at this point, if Microsoft's going to enter the whole field and say, oh, by the way, if you have Windows, which everyone will, yeah, it's free and it's built in. At that point, what's the value proposition to get all of your guys to upgrade to the paid version of any of these things? It becomes much, much more difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it becomes difficult. So there's a lot of neat stuff going on there. There's a rather interesting introductory video of Windows 11, which I linked in the show notes. I encourage you to have a look at it. Take a look. It's about 42 minutes long. So yeah, I'm actually, after you've wasted all your time with me, I'm actually saying, yeah, waste another 42 minutes and see what the guys over at Microsoft have planned for your life. It's interesting, a little bit on a technical level. Honestly, it's a little bit interesting on a social level, and there's a strange uncanny valley feeling to the way the video works, both with they have heavy use of virtual sets in the communication rollout video, to the point where I'm pretty sure they're even virtual setting the guy's own home in at one point. But beyond that, there's such a disconnect between the facial expressions, the main product leads and things like that, and what they're saying. This is corporate PR polished up to the nth degree, and it's really talking about how you're going to have a really emotional experience with your computer, and it's really going to be exciting to be alive using Windows, and they're using facial expressions. They're like, I'm just really stoked when I think about how great Windows is going to be. I'm just pumped, It's just such a disconnect. It's really a little bit eerie. So I'd be curious to see what your impressions of that were, because I found it odd. That said, it is going to be the dog food that we're all eating in the future if we're on the Windows platform at all, which means even if we're not on Windows, we're going to encounter it a lot in our lives. And by 2025, Windows 10 is going away. Windows has a long history of doing a very long support cycles for their major operating systems, but whether you know it or not, they've been even mothballing old versions of Windows. Those 1809 and the sub versions that are so hard to even determine that they've been mothballing have been going into extended support cycles, and eventually they don't get patches at all. Windows 10 is going to be an unsupported platform in toto. It's basically, think of the the number you write on the gravestone is going to be 2025, which sounds like a long time away, but if you got a big investment in corporate PCs in particular, it's a lot closer than you think. So think toward the future on this one, and then that brings us to the next topic of how we get there. Quick check of the chat, and then we'll move on to that. Let's see. Oh my God, Richard Scott. Hey, nice to see you. 115 in Portland. Good God, man. Alrighty. All right. So let's see here. Yes, very much corp speak. Mike's talking about the Windows video. Yeah, we're seeing, and it's yeah. I'm just gonna let the video speak for itself. There's also, interestingly for developers, and I got to tell you, this is one that I need to internalize myself. One of the more interesting aspects they had on it is they said, oh, by the way, we're changing up the way you get software. We want to encourage people to open up. We're Microsoft. We're so inclusive and so welcoming because when I think of Microsoft and Bill Gates and stuff, warm, fuzzy, and inclusive, those are the first words that come to my mind. I'm sure the same for you. Anyway, they are going to go ahead and go ahead and go full screen on this one, so you can see the full looks on my face here as I try to express my depth of emotion when I think about my good friends. They're going to try to essentially incent people back into their app store. Apple, once again, popularized the concept of an app store where there's one ecosystem where everything you get from Apple comes back through it. It's been vetted, it's been certified by the Lords on high. It's not in theory going to crash your machine. It's going to have certain quality standards. That's the promise of it. The real reality of it, though, is Apple was going to take 30% of every dollar that came through there. Which means if you're a software developer, like if you're on the iOS store or whatever else, the idea that Apple picks 3 cents off every dime that goes through your thing, it's the vig for being in the game for you. You do not love it. Epic came in with Fortnite, which was a monster of a game, and challenged that a lot, very much, to the point where Apple, through both legal action and just public embarrassment, wound up saying, well, if you're not making over, I think it's $1 million worth, we'll cut our take to just 15 cents for you. But Microsoft is saying, hey, we'll do you one better. If you aren't using our corporate platform for processing your transactions, we won't take a dime. It's cool, man. We love you that much. We are just your bros. Now, I'm saying this to you, but I know this comes with about 700 asterisks after it. So take this one as a doodle in the sand. But until we have a chance to completely internalize all these stipulations that are undoubtedly attached to that idea, don't take it to the bank yet. Which I guess is a way of saying don't expect that the next version of ComicBase is going to be available through the Microsoft Store anytime soon. But if they really are not going to take, all of our money whenever we sell anything through there, hey, would we like to have the greater exposure by going through the Microsoft Store? Absolutely, that'd be great. But if it comes at the cost of the revenue that keeps a small software company like us alive, not so much. But yeah, we'll be checking that out. That's going to be one of the things we follow with great interest, as they say. So anyway, keep in mind that one. They are kicking open, they're kicking over the the table legs on a lot of things right now. It doesn't look like much right now. I mean, it's very subtle. But I think a lot of things are going to change on this one, so be prepared for some crashing sounds. All right, let's talk about what's going to take to make your machine, be able to keep up with all this stuff. All right, so the very first thing that came out with all this, I'm going to switch back to the graphics on this one. Is literally one day after announcing that they were going to make this thing available, and journalists had already been able to install it and so forth. They said, well, we have a soft target and a hard target for whether or not it runs with what's called a trusted platform module, a TPM. What in God's name is a TPM, or a trusted platform module? You guys, if you're the kind of folks who read all the fine print on your computer's boxes and all the little info sheets and stuff like that, you may have seen these things being listed as a potential feature on your chips going back a decade or more. What a TPM is meant to be is it's an area of either the chip, it could be in firmware, it could be a special software set aside, it's sometimes emulated, but it's a section of your computer's guts It's typically hardware of one flavor or another that is meant to hold all the secrets. It's meant to hold, there's a RSA cryptographic key, which is unique to that module, which it allows it to sign all sorts of things that are unique to your own firmware and know they haven't been changed. If you use like BitLocker drive encryption, so when you think about like BitLocker means that all the contents of your hard drive is encrypted, right? Well, so how the hell do you boot the thing, right? I mean, if the thing's encrypted, I can't get to the areas of the drive to boot it. Well, you can, because the necessary keys to decrypt the boot blocks are kept in for the UEFI, Universal Extensible Firmware Interface, if I got that right. And I know Dazinger's going to tell me if I got it wrong. Anyway, what that does is, the very first thing it does is, as soon as you turn on the power of the whole thing, it runs its memory check, and it says, okay, let me go to the TPM module, load up the crypto keys for the whole thing, start decoding the boot device. And then you go through a process that says, all right, and this gets into an area called secure boot, which we'll hit in more detail in a moment. It says, all right, let's decrypt the initial boot sectors on the whole thing and start, booting up the, the drive. Getting the part where it says, all right, this is, this block of foo attached to my PCI bus appears to be a disk drive. Let's see what's on it. Oh, it looks, it's a disk drive. It has the following partitions, and on this partition is the following operating systems, and those operating systems, are going to start loading different, device drivers, and then those things will turn on my, keyboard and, reinitialize my USB, and that's the part where you see all the different, lights on your computer blinking and so forth as it, resets all the different parts and gets all those stuff spun up. And if you're really cool and you got an SSD, the whole darn thing takes like 10-20 seconds. But anyway, that's the whole process. Now, once upon a time, someone figured out that if I could insert a virus, or if I could insert malware right at the boot sectors, right at those first couple sectors on the drive where it tells it how to even use this device, where the partitions are, what code to execute right at the start as I spin this sucker up. If I could insert some code right there, I'm unstoppable. There's, at that point, nothing that loads can defeat me, because I can say, hey, if I see anything that looks like Norton or McAfee or something like that, just don't load it. It's cool, or tell it you're already loaded. Tell it, I've inserted what's called no ops. It's in machine language. It basically says, whatever you're going to check, I'm just going to overwrite that in real time and change it to non-executing instructions for the processor. Basically, at that point, you own the computer, and no interface that the user will ever be able to do will be able to defeat what you're doing, because you've inserted yourself at such an early level in the boot process. There's no tool I could ever use as a technician or anything else that would undo your work. I literally would have to pull the hard drive, and possibly even go and zap your PRAM or whatever else, but disable the very earliest parts of your boot cycle in order to defeat you. And it would be a horrific thing. Well, what Microsoft and a number of other industry folks did is they said, well, all right, what we want to do is we want to lock the keys to the kingdom, the things that tell us how to boot. We're going to put that in a separate, chained up little box. And some of the stuff is literally etched into firmware, which says, all right, well, the very first thing we're going to do, and this is if I turn on a feature called Secure Boot, it says, all right, I'm going to load up that burnt-in cryptographic key for this machine. And I'm going to compare that to the signature I've got on the hard drive. I'm going to say, has anything changed that I didn't expect? Because if some malware has come in, it's altered boot records, it's done whatever it's done, it will at that point have destroyed the signature. It won't match anymore. And so at that point, it literally will sit there, and when your computer boots up and it says, let's go to the first hard drive and boot it, it'll say, whoa, not going to do it, man. Someone has overwritten the boot records. Someone has overwritten, the key early device driver loads, and so I'm not. The crypto signatures no longer match. I'm not going to touch this device. You can't make me. And as a result, then it can't do any of whatever the bad stuff it meant to do. That's what Secure Boot does. It works in conjunction with the chained up crypto keys. They're kept in this vault called the Trusted Platform module, which is, again, baked onto, I mean, it can be an area of your processor chip firmware. It could be built on as a small chip on your board, or it could even be this little device I'm showing right here, it's called a TPM header module. If you see the little devices over here, the little pins, I think it's about 16 of them, give or take, those stick out to a set of pins on your motherboard. It's called a TPM header. And what they do is they just plug in there and they just interface directly onto the board. This little tiny chip you see in the background is, that's holding all the secure storage. It can only be written under very specific circumstances, under very tight control, as defined in the TPM 2.0 spec. So, fun factor, TPM modules went from being useless. Nobody used the damn things. I mean, I'm sure some high-end, installation somewhere used them, but almost nobody in the real world used these things. As soon as Windows 11 came out and was announced as, oh yeah, by the way, we won't even be installable unless you've got a TPM 2.0 and it's installed on your machine, the third-party market for these modules over here quadrupled basically overnight. You can't get them now, even on eBay. So what you're really hoping is that the thing's built into your chip. Good news is, and I included this one in the show notes as well, there's a list of processors and motherboard. I'm not sure if it goes into motherboards, but processors for sure that I included in the show notes, a long list from Microsoft of the things that will be supported under the new architecture. And typically on Intel processors, it's a feature that if you've got a certain Intel processor, it's going to have a certain version of TPM sitting right next to it. The trick, on the other hand, is that by default, it's probably not enabled. So let's talk about how to use that and find out whether your machine will ever run this darn thing just to start with. Quick check the chat before we get rolling. Because I realize anytime I babble for more than about 10 minutes, it's really good when people tell me like, oh, hey, Pete, your sound just failed, or something like that. But looks like we're good. All right. So let me go and pull up the next graphic. So you guys may or may not have ever seen a screen that looks something like this. This is on my personal computer that you're looking at right now, and the reason you're seeing like camera phone picture of it, not a picture of it. This is the UEFI screens for my computer. So when you launch a computer, typically during the first second or two of it launching, you'll see a thing. This is something like press del to enter BIOS or press del to enter configuration, something like that. And what it will do is if you press that one magic key, is it will go into a bit of software that's built into your chipset right on your motherboard. This isn't even in Windows yet. You're not running anything right now. You're running a software device. And these are getting increasingly pretty, by the way. That's actually baked right into your computer's motherboard. Now, if you've got a Dell one, it's quite a bit more basic. They look, something more like this. I've got a gigabyte motherboard, gaming rigs. I got gradients with mine. See, that's how you can tell it was worth the extra $100. That I get a lot of really cool RGB lighting headers on mine. But anyway, what you're looking for is when you go through here is you're looking for if you've got an Intel board, something called a platform. Was it Trusted Platform? Good God, what is the name of the darn thing? I'm going to have to pull the thing up larger so I can even read the thing myself, because it was not called what you would expect. Oh my goodness. Let me pull up MP1. Where you at, buddy? Program. I need program on the main view. Yeah, all right. I'm looking for. Well, that's the wrong graphic anyway. No wonder it didn't work. I'm looking. It's like it's PTT. It's the TPP, Trusted Platform Technology, or something like that. It does not say anything about a TPM. It does not say like that. But it's Platform Trusted Technology. I think it's PTT. I've now given every possible combination of those three letters now. But anyway, that's basically what it is. You're looking for that in your thing, and you want to make sure it's turned to enabled. Now, when you turn it to enabled, what are you going to see the next time you boot your machine? Not a damn thing. It will do nothing visible whatsoever. But what it will do is it will enable the features that allow your computer to look to this little vault full of crypto keys before it talks to anything else. That in return also will allow you to enable the second feature, which was shown in there, which is called Secure Boot, which is to say, once you've unlocked the crypto box, then enforce the rule which says, look at the device drivers, look at all the initial boot blocks, and if they don't have the signature I expect, just don't boot the darn thing. Which, I guess, worst case scenario on that is if you turn that on and your computer doesn't boot, worst case scenario is you got malware in your boot block. It's called a rootkit. But most likely you'll turn the thing on, you won't notice a darn bit of difference. The only difference you'll see is that Windows 11 then will allow itself to be installed. Now, the way you find out for sure whether or not you've got Windows installed properly, and this is, again, all this information is in the show notes. Let me go over to screen number 2. Is you come up under here, click on Start, and type tpm.msc. Okay, what the heck is this? First of all, let's talk a little bit about what I even just did right there, because this comes up a lot on tech support calls, and we're always telling people to do stuff like this, and they're always like, what? I don't see a place to type. Windows introduced this feature where when you click on the Windows icon just like that, you see your Start menu. You notice how there's no obvious cursor, there's no obvious place to type, nothing like that. If you just blindly type, on the other hand, and for instance, let's say I wanted to pull up the ComicBase database manager. If I just blindly type database manager, you'll notice that it just immediately grew a typing area down at the bottom there, and immediately started doing a search for everything I just typed. And then it lets you go to, in this case, the ComicBase database manager. There was never a place for me to, it never looked like there was a place for me to type there. Sometimes if you've got your taskbar configured so that it shows the Cortana search area, you can click down there. I have that area hidden on mine just for space reasons. That gives you a more obvious place to at least start typing, but if not, yeah, this is a great way to just move around your computer, is just click on the Start menu and just whatever you're looking for, just start typing it. Now, in this particular case, we're looking for tpm.msc. Now, what the heck is that? All right, TPM, as we talked about before, stands for Trusted Platform Module. That's that little hardware vault that you're talking about there. And MSC, these are basically, they come down to their control panels. They're the control panels that were too weird for Microsoft to build easily into the settings dialog or under your main control panel. It turns out there's a lot of things in Windows that, as many settings as you see under your settings there's probably 3 times as many for components, everything from, what types of services load and the sort of, control, security control standards, for your computer and so forth, the security policies and so forth, Active Directory users and groups. There's any number of these things that, like, unless you knew that they existed, you would never ever find them because they aren't searchable. The only thing they have in common is they all end with .msc. Anyway, and this one is one I, again, had never heard of before 2 days ago myself, and it's the Trusted Platform Module, .msc, Microsoft Common Console document. How you get MSC into Common Console document, I got nothing. I always think of them as control panels. Now, because I've gone ahead and gone to my my UEFI, that thing that comes up when you hit Del, right when you start your computer the first time, and I've turned on both Secure Boot and the platform Trusted Platform technology from Intel. At that point, now it says, oh yeah, hey, I see that you have a Trusted Platform module, and it is version 2.0. It's ready to go. There we are, specification version 2.0. The manufacturer name INTC. You might know that is the stock ticker for Intel Corporation. And we're ready to rock. So I'm ready to install Windows 11 on this thing. And I'll talk about how to get Windows 11 in just a minute. But if you type tpm.msc and it doesn't say that you're ready to go, wait till after this podcast, because if you boot into it now, the only way you can switch this is if you do it right at boot time. So you will be, unless you're watching me on your phone or something, you will, that will be the last of this podcast you see for a bit. But when you do, go into your BIOS, see if you can find anything involving either a TPM or an Intel Trusted Platform technology. Enable that. See if when you go to tpm.msc, if it says that I see you're at TPM and you're ready to go. If so, hey, life is good. Just one other thing is, typically I found from my own experience, turning on that information from at least a gigabyte chipset will also turn on the secure boot technology. But if it's not enabled already, make sure that secure boot is also enabled. Both of these, I think, by default are typically turned off because there hasn't been a need for them. There hasn't been a use for them. So there's always just like there's other features. If you browse around the BIOS on your computer, there are things like saying I'm not going to boot unless you provide a password. So in theory, if you really enjoy typing passwords, you could make it so it password protected your BIOS every time you go, or certainly before you configure it. These things are typically turned off. In theory, they're more secure, but they would really make you nuts if they were turned on for most people. Anyway, so go ahead and do that. Hopefully, if it says that TPM is ready to go, then you're probably in good shape. Now, Microsoft used to have a tool out up until, I think, about 3 days ago that was like the upgrade assistant that would tell you, hey, are you ready for Windows 11? And they pulled it. It's a little controversial as to why. When Microsoft announced that they were going to suddenly require TPM 2.0 before they installed Windows 11, as you might imagine, the roof fell in because you had, just imagine I'm the acquisitions guy for I don't know, name your large company. I'm American Health and American Family Insurance, something like that. I might have 40,000 laptops I buy at once, and it's my job to keep them all running on my company's network all at once. If you tell me that you're going to obsolete my operating system, in 2025, so I better switch it over, but I now have to verify the hardware specs of 40,000 laptops, make sure all my guys are rolled up, everything's configured, according to our company's security standards. They've got all the software that they use to do their insurance work, and everything is all certified to work on it. There's no glitches on the whole thing. This is a freaking nightmare for me. And then if you tell me, oh, by the way, because we want to be more secure, we need a feature which probably wasn't built into your laptops because their processor's a little bit old. At that point, I freaking hate your guts. At that point, I've got some clout behind me because I buy 40,000 computers at a time, or I buy 100,000 computers at a time, or God help me, I'm some government, department of the U.S. government. I might, if I'm a member of like one of these acquisitions, acquisitions groups, I might be responsible for shifting millions of computers, theoretically. You've got the ability to get Microsoft to change their mind, and that's one thing that I think before we really freak out on any of this stuff, it bears keeping in note. Microsoft has a long history of wanting to introduce features like this that really are more secure. They really would help. But when faced with pushback from people who command really large numbers of computers, a lot of time they crumble. And so don't count necessarily that what they're doing, what they say they're doing today is what they're going to be doing tomorrow. They might have announced that, we're going to do TPM 2.0, but in the end of the day, it was a good idea. It really would be good. We really hope you move up to it. We'll be changing the defaults in the future, but we're not going to require it because we don't want to deal with this much grief in the near term from how many potential lost sales of Windows, and when you lose Windows sales, you also lose Microsoft Office sales, you lose Windows Server contracts, you lose all sorts of licenses. Maybe you don't want that kind of grief in your life if you're Microsoft. So I get that they want to make things as secure as possible. I get that they're trying to do. I actually really do believe this about them. I give Microsoft a fair amount of stick, but I really do think the guys in security at Microsoft are trying very, very hard to shore up this constantly attacked surface, which is Microsoft. Windows gets attacked like you can't believe on a 24/7 basis. Every one of our computers is under absolute attack on so many levels from so many ingenious people who are just thinking, man, if I could get in and install a rootkit, install called RATs, remote access terminals, whatever else. But if I could do that on any percentage of Windows, and get that out there, I could control hundreds of thousands, millions of computers. This gives me an enormous amount of heft as a hacker. And so the world's best computer bad guys are under attack, are attacking Microsoft all the time. So if you're Microsoft and you want to harden things up, yeah, you're going to use every trick in the book to do that, but then there's the marketing guys over at Microsoft who have to deal with the fact that they got to keep Microsoft in business. They don't want to get Microsoft chucked out of all the world's offices. So, there are realities as well. So, despite all these intentions to say, look, I know you want Windows 11, it's the future, you're going to have it, you'll be very happy with it and everything. Don't be surprised if at the last minute they back off and everything I've said to you doesn't matter at all because they just decide, we'll hit it in the future. All right, so let's do a quick check of the chat, see how we're doing. All right, Jeff, thank you for the kind words. Says thanks for being on top of the cost and software developments. Let's see. Competent Man. Hey, nice to see you again, man. Yeah, I thought I was going to be missing you on this one. Any way to avoid the TPM seeming another needless addition? Seems like a con to force hardware upgrade purchases. It's like I say. I don't feel like I'm particularly naive about Microsoft's motives. I mean, I think a lot of people in the corporate world do things for a number of motives. I mean, let's take Apple and cables, right? I think there's some engineers at Apple, who, so every single time they introduce a new device, there must be a new cable that comes with it that's completely incompatible with your old cable. I think the engineers on the team are sitting there going, but I've been learning about this new technology, about this new Lightning or Thunderbolt 2 or whatever else cable, and there's some reason why I really like it versus the other cable, which would have been readily available and cost $1.50 to implement, which gives us what I think is a uniquely wonderful experience being on Apple. I really do think that engineer exists, and I think he cares about what he's doing and is doing everything he does with an engineer's version of a pure heart. I also think there's some guys in marketing who say, hey, margin on cables is like 800%. Doesn't hurt us at all if we sell a lot of mandatory upgrade 800% margin cables. So yeah, you can have they call it the bootlegger and Baptist problem with I don't know if you guys ever heard of public choice theory, but it basically, how do decisions in the big world get made by a lot of interested parties who maybe have different interests from each other, but you all want to influence the final outcome. There's a phenomenon called bootleggers and Baptists where, like, let's say I'm Al Capone, right? And it really would be great for me if I controlled the supply of booze, right? Because if I supply if I'm the guy who's supplying all the booze to Chicago, I'm going to get all the business. I'm going to get all the margin. I'm going to charge what I want. My guys are going to rule the thing with all the power that comes with that, and so forth. So I actually love it if the guy I'm competing against is not Costco, right? I mean, if I'm competing against a bunch of yokels with stills, my guys can go out there and rough them up and own their business pretty easily, and I will control the booze market. So even though I'm a thoroughly bad guy, I really want there to be heavy anti-liquor laws, because that way all the liquor that does move moves through me. Now, Baptists, on the other hand, bless their heart, right? They're going to the whole thing pure of hearts. They're thinking booze is bad, man. It ruins families. It causes all sorts of trouble in the world. Nothing good ever came of a drunk guy on a Sunday morning. Whatever they're thinking, right? So they also could be thinking, yep, we hate us. We want some strong anti-liquor laws. And Al Capone and the local minister will get together and they'll be like, absolutely, right on, brother. We agree with your aims 100%, even though they're coming at things completely from the other side of things. So, I mean, look, I think there are security guys who really care and really want to lower their own attack surface. I think they would make TPM 17.0 if they could, because that would be an easier surface to defend than whatever the known vulnerabilities in the current world of theirs is. But I also think there's people at Microsoft, Intel, hundreds of other companies who sit there and say, computers these days are pretty good, man. People are holding on to them for really long periods of time. I mean, it's not like the old days where we could get someone to buy a new machine every 3 years and pay us a couple grand. So, hey, Windows 11, you want to require TPM 2.0, which is only found on newer chipsets in order to upgrade to the computer software that will now be required, and the only thing that will be supported in the future is that thing that requires the new hardware? Oh, that's a shame, but I guess we'll back you on it. I do think that's the way the world works. So, I mean, it's not all one thing or the other, but the net effect is, yes, it's going to drive a lot of hardware upgrades. And there's some good and there's some bad with that. And, for the rest of us, the guys like us who don't get to make the decisions, generally I'd say let's roll with it. All right, let's see here. Richard Scott says, been on Microsoft beta list, the module wasn't mentioned at all with the Windows 11 announcement. Anal pose. I'm not sure what that means exactly, Richard, but I'm probably agree with you if I did understood it. Yeah, no, it was literally, it was like, I want to say 24 hours or less after the announcement. They announced that, oh yeah, by the way, there's this earth-shattering hardware requirement that none of you guys have paid any attention to at all, which may make it so that you can't run it. So, yeah, go figure. Mike Beam, another man who thinks it's going to become an option. I don't know. I think quite possibly. Let's see here. Kathy D says computer that got last year, ready to go based on Windows 11. Good to go. All right, and yeah, and some other great comments. All right, I think it's pushed by the corporate ransomware problem. Yeah, Oro. Yeah, I agree with you as well, man. The ransomware thing is, we're getting to some next level hacks, man. This is not just kids, jumping onto your website and writing, Fraz was here, at the top just to, be a big man. No, we're at the point where like, no, man, it's like, yeah, we're shutting down your pipeline. Send me Bitcoin if you want to see your business again. I know several hospitals who've been hit by this. Any number of other attacks. It's the levels you need to go to ensure your business is safe from ransomware attacks, really, or for that matter, really serious computer attacks, are unbelievable. I did a long consulting gig over at God, I'm gonna get it wrong because I want to say Chase. No, I'm gonna say it's Visa. Sorry, I had Chase Visa in my head. The two things were just merged on each other, but no, it was Visa in San Francisco, and I had a bunch of guys on my team who were consulting on a new system of theirs, and we, because you came from this cool consulting group I was with, everyone's got their like really slick Inspiron laptops, with the glowing silver screens, and we all look, all hip and cool and stuff like that. And everyone who wanted to get on the corporate network over at Visa had to exchange those for like a 3-inch brick of a 1997. Windows, if it was XP, I think that would have been a thing, but I think it might have been Windows 7, but it also might have been Windows XP. The thing was older than old, but it was locked down to one of these corporate boot images where like they had made it so like you could even stick like a USB key into it and it would refuse the key. It would refuse to see it, because the last thing they wanted is somebody over at Visa saying, oh, look, here's a list of Visa numbers. I'm just going to go drop it on this, corporate laptop, transfer it over to this USB thing and walk out the door with it. That was never going to happen there. They also had things like you couldn't be on social media if you worked there, because they thought, we might be able to reverse engineer something about you, reverse engineer something about your kids, your family, your passwords, whatever the thing is, or maybe even blackmail or do something else to threaten you. So yeah, no, they took the security very, very frickin' seriously, and that's not even a military situation. And we all remember Chelsea Manning just walked out with I forget how many gigabytes of military secrets on something. I believe it was on a USB key labeled something like Lady Gaga mixtape or some crap like that. Anyway, but yeah, no, it's a brutal world out there. So yeah, I am sympathetic to the guys who really go to extreme measures to try to lock down their worlds, and so I do get what they're thinking of when they do this. All right, let's see here. Okay, Jet City. Just wait till they attack the power grid. Yeah, go figure. J Camp says, don't worry, they won't attack the power grid, because on that list that Biden gave Putin of off-limits targets. So I know that comforted me. All right, let's move on. All right, so let's talk about, first of all, so we've talked to death about TPM and secure boot and things like that, and hopefully your guys will all, your machines will all run it. If not, hopefully your next machine will. Let's face it, the other thing that everyone knows about Windows is the vast majority of people who use any particular version of Windows didn't get it by going out to the store and buying the upgrade version or even downloading the free upgrade version. Typically people got it because they bought a new machine, and that's one of the reasons that both Apple and Microsoft for the longest time, it was like a decade or more for Apple's case, had one quote-unquote version of Macintosh, which would just automatically, if you kept on hitting check for updates, it would just say, oh yeah, okay, I'm now the different tiger. I'm now the different, national park. It didn't say I'm upgrading you to a whole brand new operating system. It's just, no, I've just updated you a little bit. So they treat it just like any other software update. It's just, Apple's case, it was like about 2-hour long process. But for Windows, the same thing. It's like you've probably, if you've had Windows 10 for any length of time, you've probably gone through at least 3 major software redos of Windows, where back in the old days that would have been like the equivalent of going from Windows 7 to Windows 8 to version 8.1. I mean, it would have been like a big deal change, with the exception of the interface being relatively static between the versions. But in terms of how much code was changed on the back end, they're really trying to make it so that software, once you've got it, is just an automatic push, and so you get it all at once. There was a point here, and I might be losing it a little bit, but I'm going to try to get back on track. All right. So let's see here. Oh, yes. So the main thing, though, is most people who are going from Windows 10 to Windows 11, in other words, doing one of these intentional big upgrades, we're the geeks, right? We're the guys watching this show who care about TPMs and secure boots and UEFIs and things like that. We're the guys who are actually going to find it when it's early, check it out, tell our friends, do stuff like that. Most everyone else we know, the reality is they're going to wait till their computer falls apart, or kid spills a Coke on it or something else, and they get stolen at the mall or whatever, and at that point they're going to go and buy a new one, and it'll just be installed on it. And at the point where it's just been installed by Dell or whoever they bought their computer from, they'll have worried about whether it had a TPM. They'll have worried about the boot settings and all the other stuff. That's going to be most people. So it's just the reality. So again, one of the things where, like, even though we're all excited to get on top of the newest thing right away, it's a little bit of a slow your roll in terms of how you think this is going to change the world. It is going to change the world, but it's going to be way slower than we think. All right, so we talked about BitLocker Secure Boot, and I think we got a little bit into the thing. I want to back up a little bit and let's talk about 32-bit, because I'm getting down to the what do we do about ComicBase. Couple minutes. I am going to get to this. There is believe it or not, guys, there is a little bit of a structure to this program. I do have an outline I'm reading off of before this thing. So before I get to what we're doing with ComicBase, I want to talk a little bit about future-proofing your rig just in general, right? So let's face it. If you can't get if you look at your if you built your own computer and you're wondering, I don't know, I haven't got, I got an AMD thing, it doesn't have TPM built onto the processor, but I've got a TPM header, so I've got those little points sticking out, near one of my fan blocks or something else like that. So I could go, in theory, go to eBay, blow $100, get a TPM module as soon as someone bootlegs one over to me or something. Yeah, you could do that, or you could do what probably makes more sense is just wait till it's time to upgrade your whole chipset or your whole motherboard and get the whole thing done all at once. I wouldn't, if you don't have TPM, so if you go booting through your UEFI and you don't see any of the things I'm talking about and you're pretty sure they don't exist, I wouldn't sweat it right away. I mean, me personally. I mean, unless I'll this way, if you're the kind of guy who needs to have the latest and greatest, you probably bought a processor that has it already. But if you're not, if everything's working just fine for you on your current rig in terms of stuff, and the only thing you're worried about is will it run Windows 11, you know what? Wait till Windows 11 comes out, because at that point, when you buy a new machine, it'll probably just be there. So I'd just say, don't go out in the third-party market and buy yourself a TPM module. Would be my advice to almost anyone. Not unless you have some reason where you need to test with it or something else like that. One thing I would do is, if you are looking about future-proofing your current rig, right? So if you have a really, really old machine, right? What things would I look for in terms of having a computer that's going to stay with me for the next, say, 5 years or so? All right, number one is, if I'm on Intel, I'd want to make sure I'm on the 8th generation Intel chips or later. Now, okay, 8th generation, I mean, I forget whether that's Clear Lake or something Lake, or, Intel has all, as if they're i3, i7, i9, as if all that stuff wasn't cryptic enough, and let's not even talk about the Pro and the Extreme and the locked and unlocked versions. They gave up. The last time their code names made any sense probably was Pentium. It's like they used to have 286, 386, 486, and they said, well, no, we're going to call it 586. Nah, we're going to call it Pentium. and after that, it just, it got nuts. But anyway, at some point in the last 10 years or so, they decided, all right, we're gonna just have numbers. Yeah, we'll have general product families. The threes are kind of like i3s. It's kind of like our starter chips. They only have like 4 cores on them. The i7s are like, that's more hardcore things, and the i9s introduced, those are like for the bleeding edge guys. Well, you might have noticed when you bought your chip, if you built your own rig, it wasn't just i9, it was like an i9 8900K or something like that. All right, well, the trick on that one is the number, is like the digits on that one give away the generation number. They have, Intel's famous for having, they call it the tick-tock cycle, where basically they had for a number of years a 2-year cycle of introducing new versions of things, and on the big part of the cycle, I forget whether it's supposed to be the tick or the tock, they would do a speed bump, and then the other one they would do a die size shrink. The problem is that Intel for a lot of years has been stuck at the same die sizes. They've really had trouble getting down to the smaller and smaller traces and keeping the whole thing stable. This is actually one of these places where AMD is starting to eat their lunch and Intel's getting scared. But anyway, the way that they would give away what generation they were on is because of the model number, the digits in the model number. So let me see if I can pull mine up right here and see what's on my particular machine right now. So I'm going to go, let me go ahead and show this on the computer so we got something to look at. I'm going to go to, if you go to, a good way to get to the areas, if you say, just type in PC, go to this PC, and here's the basic stuff right there. But if you click up here at System Properties, it'll give you some information about your computer. All right, so on my computer, and this one in the latest versions of Windows, this one became all cool and black. It's respects my dark mode setting and whatnot. I have an i9, so i9 is like the for the enthusiasts, or for that matter, just the people with a little bit of money to burn. They don't have anything else going on in their life, so they decide, hey, what the hell? I'll blow the extra $200 at the one with the 9 in it because I'll feel more badass. But the 9900, the 9 there tells me this is a 9th generation i9 processor. So the later ones would be 10900 or so forth. Anyway, make sure you've got yourself an 8th generation or later processor. So when you go into your about this computer, go to property settings, have a look at the numbers on your particular processor, and make sure that you've got at least an 8 sitting right there. Whether you've got an i3, i7, i5, make sure that your first digit there is an 8. Because that's going to tell you whether or not this thing is going to be ready to rock for the next world. Beyond that, wow, I'll have more chat. We'll get onto this one. Beyond that, as you guys have probably seen beforehand, I am a huge fan of get yourself an SSD drive. I think, short of having like a really good monitor for your computer, having an SSD is probably the biggest thing you can do to make your computer run faster. If you guys were paying attention during Prime Day, they had the Samsung 980s, the NVMe, the one that are like a stick you mount right onto your motherboard, and they run like the wind because they're running on the PCIe bus. Those ones were down to like $100 for the terabyte version. They're up to $119 at Newegg.com as of call it press time, as of showtime. But still, for something that's going to run like at 3,000 megabytes per second transfer rate, as opposed to your old computer's 40 megabytes per second. Good God, buying an SSD and transferring your data to that onto a suitably large one so you can do your main work. Have both your Windows and your main documents both on the same SSD, that is going to make such a difference in your life. It's going to be more important than almost anything else I could think of to do with your machine. More than memory, more than processor, get yourself an SSD. And as far as the Mac folks, if you've got an M1 chip, I hear great things. I don't have enough comparisons from hardware guys I trust that aren't just kind of repeating Apple propaganda. That tell, I mean, all the word in general is that they're quite fast. I don't have enough really heads to heads, apple to apples, things I've seen that would let me comment on how much faster or how they stand in comparison to the best of what Intel and AMD are offering. I mean, everyone's always going to choose the one application that makes them look badass and use, oh, absolutely, yeah, that's the one. For anti-aliasing, 64-bit images with 4 gig resolution, we can do it 38% faster than our competitors. Yeah, okay, but how often does that happen? That's the part. So I'd be looking for someplace. Have a look at sites like Tom's Hardware. Very, very, very good source for hardware spec news. But if you have an M1, if anything, you're probably future forward. In other words, if you have an M1 based computer, you're waiting for the world to catch up to you. As we talked about a couple times ago, Parallels is now shipping their version, which will let you run ComicBase and other things like that on the M1. But some of the .NET stuff that's really going to make it work right, and do some of the other more advanced stuff, you're still waiting on Microsoft to ship that stuff. So the .NET that you're actually interfacing with is really sort of a forward-looking version of that. So you're actually ahead of the game, so I guess if you got it, just enjoy it. And if there are weirdnesses and glitches, expect them to go away over time. But certainly don't buy anything newer right now, because you're probably just fine. But if you do have anything older than, like, I'll call it, 6-7 years old as a processor, treat yourself to something nice this coming summer and buy yourself a new computer. You will probably see enough difference that it'll make a difference in your life. All right. Finally, let's get on to the question that was asked an hour ago almost at this point. ComicBase. And let's talk about ComicBase and what we're doing in the future. And here I'm just going to, look, guys, I'm going to give this to you as straight as possible, whether it makes me look good or not, which is a wonderful way of saying it a roundabout way. I'm going to tell you some things that probably piss off somebody. All right, first of all, honesty. ComicBase is a 32-bit application right now. Why is it a 32-bit application? First of all, why do I care? What's 32-bit versus 64-bit? So 32-bit means that the highest number we can address in memory is 2 to the 32nd power. So it winds up being a number around 4 gigabytes, is about as much memory as ComicBase can use in a sensible way, because it doesn't, when you're talking about what address you'd like to be at in memory, you can't make a number higher than 4 gigabytes, because 2 to the 32nd power doesn't go that high. It might be 2 to the 31st power, because when you go to the 32nd power, typically you're using the top bit, the 0, 1, to indicate whether or not you're positive or negative. So you can have a thing called a signed integer or an unsigned integer. If the thing you're addressing, if you know it'll never be negative, then you can go with the full 32 bits. Otherwise, your limit's 2 to the 31st bit. So if you ever wondered why some things cap out at 2 gigabytes and some things cap out at 4 when they're both on 32 gigabit systems, that's a bonus geeky question for you there, which I keep expecting to be answered at Trivia Nights and never, ever is. Anyway. So why is ComicBase 32-bit? Well, the underlying answer is because we rely still on a technology called ADO. And now I'm just going to absolutely lose my mind. ADO.net. ADO. Oh my god, I'm losing my Microsoft abbreviations. It's getting to the end of the show, so just bear with me, guys. But the old Microsoft method for addressing databases was technology that was fundamentally 32-bit. It's just they did not have versions that went 64-bit, and so if we ever want to be able to open a ComicBase 2017 database, we had to use the old style addressing to get to it, because there was no new one. Now, SQLite, which we switched to when we did ComicBase 2020, that one is 64-bit, which is why if you have a 32-bit installation of ComicBase, you've been a little pissed off with us, because you say, wait a minute, you're a 32-bit application. At the same time, when you did the screensaver for the archive edition, you didn't bother making a 32-bit version of it. It's because we didn't want to have both 32-bit and 64-bit versions of SQLite kicking around. So when we had to make the compatibility things for the screensaver in there, we only shipped the 64-bit version, because we knew we were going to get rid of the 32-bit one pretty soon. And let's face it, the screensaver is pretty darn optional. So 64-bit's great, because you can make a number that's 2 to the 32nd power is bigger than 4 gigabytes, which makes it, I forget what the number is. It's really, really large. I forget whether it's petas or yadas or whatever else, but it's a damn large number. It's more memory than I'm ever going to have. I don't know if it's one of those all the stars in the universe, types of things, but it's one of those kind of numbers. If you and there's such a thing as I think called a long, which is 2 to the 128th power, which is what they use when they really do need to count all the atoms in the universe. But at a certain point, you have just more bigness in your numbers than any application we found on Earth needs. Anyway, we're looking forward to going 64-bit very soon, but we need to drop support for the old 32-bit databases in order to do it. It is possible. It's not on the roadmap for ComicBase, the next version of ComicBase for Burning Man. As you know, that one, it's not planned as a feature there, but don't be surprised if it doesn't show up really closely after that. Where what we do is, if you have a very old ComicBase database that you need to convert over to a new format, maybe we write a separate program, which that's its whole job is to convert databases to the new thing and then quit. We'd have to write a separate utility which did that to support that, or we could just announce, hey, yeah, you wait too long to upgrade. Sorry, I don't like that second answer, so I suspect if we get there, writing things as a separate application will probably be the way we get there. This is one of those things that can take somebody a month of their time to get done and debugged, and then we have to support it with installers and things like that. So it hasn't been high on our support list, but once we've done that, then we have the ability to make ComicBase a fully 64-bit application. All the guts we've been writing in ComicBase for a very long time has been 64-bit. So I do look forward to getting rid of that one sooner rather than later. And then finally, I'm going to take one more last spin of the chats on this one. And by the way, thank you so much for hanging with me as we babble on about technical stuff. We did not get to too many of your user questions on this one, but hopefully the next show it will be way less geeky and we'll get more into comic-y type things. Anyway, the last thing I want to say is I'm going to just go ahead and make the announcement right now. We are going to be ending support for ComicBase 2017's mobile features as of 10/31/2021, which that'll be something like 3 years after we introduced ComicBase 2020. So what that will mean, and take this one as I guess until there's a pitchforks at the house or whatever else. What that means is, if for some reason you're still using just a decrepit old version of ComicBase, something using the old 32-bit databases from way back when, the really slow ones that were based on Microsoft Access. If you're still using ComicBase 2017 or earlier, what will happen is you'll stop being able to post mobile reports to those in the future, and we won't be able to use the mobile app anymore with those until you upgrade. Because what we have to do is we have to take at some point, there's two things that have to happen. One is we need to stop support of our own back-end utilities having to cope with opening two sets of different databases with all the code that comes with those. Basically, if you saw our back-end processing utilities like Jimmy, our reporting and so forth, they're almost like a hybrid engine. Like, if you own a Prius or something like that, it has a gas drivetrain and it has an electric drivetrain, and the gas one has to worry about carburetors and all the other stuff like that, and the electric drivetrain has to worry about batteries and all the stuff that goes along with that, and it's two sets of complications. It really ramps up all the things that can go wrong, and increasingly there are so few people using the old version. You sit there and you kind of wonder, guys, why are we still doing this? Especially because there are things we can do with the new versions that make them work much more smoothly, much more quickly than with the old versions. So for the sake of some people using many year old software that hasn't been upgraded, at a certain point you're like, this is a lot of work, man. We gotta really stop doing this at some point. The second point is that we do actually have just like TPM, they would like to reduce their security attack space. We, on our end, would very much like to reduce our internet attack space by getting rid of some protocols that were used for file transfer back in the ComicBase 2017 days, which have not been used for many years now, but which unfortunately requires to have a large number of ports open. And we can just, if you're looking at our back-end scanners and firewalls, you see folks coming by, again, just many times per minute, doing what's called a port scan and trying to say, oh, hey, we found a server. What ports does this guy open, and where might we be able to launch an attack? If you run a server, you want the attackers to see your world through a soda straw. You want them to have the smallest possible entry into your world, and have one hole that you can plug up very, very well, as opposed to having Swiss cheese all over the place with, you know, thousands of open ports where you have to defend them all. Now, unfortunately, the file transfer protocol is called FTP, that was used back in the old days for ComicBase 2017 and earlier, not only required not only gave us a lot more trouble dealing with people's firewall software, because their firewall software might have blocked a bunch of those ports, but it also requires us to leave a lot of machinery open on our side open, listening to those, you know, ports. And I literally, you know, if whenever we dial on and we're watching things in real time, we can watch people from all around the globe trying to rando guess the passwords to the transfer accounts, you know, and it's, on one hand, it's kind of hilarious because they're never I mean, I'll tell you now, guys, if you're watching, you're never getting in using the methods you're trying. But I hate seeing my computers waste their time putting off you guys trying to get in so hard. I'm not saying that someday you couldn't get just lucky as hell and you know, crack into something that would let you get someplace you shouldn't get, but I am really, really tired of seeing that we need to defend such a wide space. So as of October 31st, 2021, we are going to shut down support for FTP on our servers, which means that, as an effect, you will no longer be able to use Sidekick for ComicBase 2017 to transfer up files, which means you won't be able to sync up your mobile apps and things like that. Very much a long way of saying, guys, you know, we love you, very much appreciate your business, but if you need to keep, you know, using the mobile features, you know, sometime in the next, you know, several months, please try to upgrade, and reach out to us if you have any troubles, you know, with that one. But please upgrade to the modern stuff, because we want to run as tight a ship as we possibly can for all y'all and keep it all running smoothly. So we need your help on that, and you know, we need to close up a few doors in order to, you know, keep the ones we have working properly. All right, I think I've said about all that. One last check the chat, and then I think we'll move on. Oro says, remember the 80s math coprocessor chips? I had those, man. I actually bought those to stick as extra chips on my Mac. Can you put the trusted platform module capable chips on PC or E or M2 card or flash software onto existing BIOS? I believe you can. There might even be an USB implementation of that. Though now that I'm saying that, because you need to initialize the USB bus separately, probably not. It probably has to be built onto a header onto your card. So, you know, I'm going to guess not anything that involves a bus. It's probably going to literally need to be like an electrical contact, almost like a fan header. Because if there's a driver required to get to it, it wouldn't work almost by definition. Anyway, so yeah, there you go. Age of the Camp, always build my own computers, always buy the newest operating system. Makes sense to me, man. All right, let's see here. By the time Windows 10 is on support, I'll probably be in the market for a new computer anyway, so that's how I'll get Windows 11. Makes sense to me, man. I am amazed to this day how many people, like, when we went and had to finally say, guys, it's over. We gotta obsolete our support for Windows 7, and so we literally just changed a little flag in the installer that says, if you're on Windows 7, you ain't gonna run anymore, because it doesn't have the versions of .NET we're expecting and all sorts of other things like that. I was amazed how years and years after the fact, I mean, Windows 7 had been obsolete for like a decade by that point. There were still people who were like screaming bloody murder. It's like, you know, how could you do this to me? It's like, guys, don't you ever buy a new machine ever? But anyway, so it goes. All right, let's see. Pete's got money to burn. Yeah, that's me, man. You see this luxury behind me, you know. Come on, obviously, I'm like Scrooge McDuck here. All right, Gregory Hector Ranch, dude. Greg, you know, reach out to me, man. And we gotta find out how to make that happen. But yeah, please, let's do it. And I think we hit the 64-bit CB. All right, got it. All right, man. I think this makes sense. Let's call it a day for now. Thank you so much, everyone. Go out there, and if you're someplace hot, go kick back. You know, throw on some good music, open up a beer, and just enjoy the day, man. Summer is fierce sometimes, but it's way too short, so enjoy it while you got it. All right, guys, you have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, now we're out.